Hi, I am the developer of Bookbound and welcome to my first video. Today I'd like to show you a run through of the development of Bookbound along with footage of the game at different stages, so you can see what has changed from the first playable version until the release. What is Bookbound? Bookbound is a cozy bookshop sim game where you run your own bookshop. Your tasks include decorating, stock management, helping customers, expanding, and you get to meet a cast of characters in town with amazing storylines. Why a bookshop game? My wife and I love going to bookshops and browse books to read. After doing some research, I had noticed that nobody had actually created a game where you run a bookshop with decorative elements. With previous development experience in shop sim games, it became a no-brainer. Until October 1st, 2024, I was working on another game called Bots and Mods, which I put on pause to start developing a prototype for Bookbound. I only wanted to spend about a month working on this. It took 3.5 weeks, so just before my deadline. What tools have I used? I am using the Godot engine version 4.3. I had experience using Godot because of my previous project, Bots and Mods. It's an intuitive engine when it comes to building objects by using a node-based system. It supports C#, a programming language which I have used for a decade. Also, it's free. I've been using VS Code, a free code editor for my C# needs. Since I'm a programmer by trade, I have little skills to do full original artwork, so I bought assets from Lime Zoo on itch.io. It's a fantastic way to get started, and I've been getting better at modifying existing art whenever I need. To modify pixel art, I used Sprite. Version 1. Prototype. This is the prototype version of Bookbound. At the time, it actually had no name, and I referred to it as Project Pinocchio. I picked Pinocchio because I knew right from the start that the game would involve something coming to life. I just didn't exactly know what. The goal was to create a minimum viable product, a game that lets you decorate a shop, help customers, and manage stock. The level looks completely bland, with nothing but the shop, a garden, and a road. The character is also very simple with plain white clothes. The first version of the shop is tiny. There isn't much space, but at least it was cozy. You can already place some shelves and decorate a little. There weren't many options, but enough for my goal. I was thinking it'd be awesome to be able to build an outdoor garden. So I added the ability to place plants outside, with plans to add more outdoorsy items later. There are a few books in the prototype, all of which are real, but I already knew I couldn't keep, considering copyright and everything. The art for the books was drawn by me. I had to add a cover variant, which would display on the shelf menu, a shelf variant that would be on top of the shelves in the game, and 4 more variants for when the player is carrying the books, 1 for each direction, up, down, left and right. It was possible to order books via the cash register, and the postman would come and drop off the order. Customers only appeared after pressing a shortcut to spawn them. Then they automatically walked to the shop and started browsing. Overall, I was extremely happy with how it turned out. The core gameplay loop was already implemented, decorating was somewhat robust, and I knew exactly how I needed to continue. My own assessment wasn't enough though. I wanted to see if my target audience agrees, so I posted a 1-minute long clip showing off all the features I had on Reddit in the Cozy Games subreddit. The feedback was phenomenal, and many people were eager to play it. I reached a fork in the road: go back to developing bots and mods, or continuing with Bookbound. I decided to stick with Bookbound, since I was exploding with inspiration and motivation. Version 2. Full steam ahead. From October until December 2024, I packed and polished many features in the game. I also found the perfect title, Bookbound. When starting the game, the player is now prompted to create their own character. This is based on all the art from the Lime Zoo packages I had bought. There were a ton of options, and I packed it in a little window when starting the game. I'm super happy about letting players create their own character however they like. I changed the environment to a town setting. It just made more sense for a bookshop to be in a town rather than being a random house with a garden. I would have loved to have the garden decorating feature, but being in a town allows some other awesome features that fit the shop sim genre more. There's now a bustling town and people just walking around and visiting shops or the park. The player can talk to them to invite them in. This was a repeating bit of dialogue that worked based on chance. There are some changes in the shops too. When the player walks in, they get greeted by a floating and talking book. This is a cutscene, beginning a storyline and the tutorial. Stefan guides the player into placing shelves, ordering and selling books. The player now has to open the shop at 10 AM and serve customers until 5 PM. This is when they can go outside and advertise the shop. Customers now also generate rubbish randomly. This adds to the player's responsibilities of keeping the shop clean if they would like. There are actually no disadvantages of leaving rubbish, since any new players naturally would want to clean it to keep their shops nice and tidy. At this point, the rubbish generation is pretty aggressive and annoying. The books in the game are now generated by me and aren't based on real books anymore. With the concept of genres, I wanted to give players the incentive to sell different books. So I added a genre overview that displayed how many unique books the player has sold in each genre. When they reach 100%, they unlock a fancy background when inside the shop. The player starts with only a couple of books in their catalog and has the option to unlock one or two more at the end of each workday. This adds game progression and paces the player a bit. If they had everything unlocked at the start, the game would be too boring. Once I was done adding these changes, I launched the Steam page for Bookbound. The cover art was drawn by an artist called Art by Gongor. I tried to draw one myself too, but it was terrible. Using the latest version of the game, I recorded new gameplay footage to put into a trailer and a nice variety of screenshots so anybody who visits the Steam page can get an understanding on what this game is about. There's an approval process by Valve, the company that owns Steam, to make sure that my Steam page is ready for the public. Once approved and published, I posted about it on Reddit to gain wish lists. This is an important metric for developers to estimate how much demand there is for their game. At this stage, the numbers weren't the best, but enough to keep me going. Version 3, the Steam demo. I've been juggling a part-time job and the development of Bookbound, and since developing Bookbound was also my hobby, I was on the verge of burning out, so I took off 2 weeks to enjoy Christmas. After a well-earned break, I knew I had to work towards a public Steam demo. I didn't want to rush this process and deliver something unstable or unpolished. I exported my project and asked others to play it for the first time. The playtesters were my wife and a couple of friends who all had lots of gaming experience. Whilst from that group only my wife was in the target audience, they all gave me a ton of actionable feedbacks. It was a little intimidating at first when I received not just messages, but they sent across whole Word documents. But this is exactly what I needed, feedback to really polish the game. Then I cracked on with work. Right off the bat, I added a bunch of quality of life features that the playtesters asked for. For example, when starting the game, the player should be pointed to the shop so that they know where to walk. On the shelf menu, I added a quick move action of books so it's easier to fill the shelves. Now there are more details about how the genre bonus worked when selling books that were shelved with other books of the same genre. Remember how the first version of the shop was tiny and cozy? Some playtesters mentioned they would like to have more space so they can sell more books. All the shelves were crammed together and there wasn't much space for decoration, so I agreed and increased the shop size. Previously, players needed to place items individually and go back to the build menu for each instance. So to make building easier, I allow players to continuously place items. This makes it easier to place loads of the same piece of furniture, like plants or shelves. Remember the genre-specific background when you reach 100%? I expanded this a little more, so that along the way to the 100%, players unlock genre-themed furniture. I was really happy with this because it added to the decoration gameplay and improved the game progression. Most importantly, I added the magic duck. If you know, you know. At this stage, I added a ton of small tweaks to the gameplay loop, NPCs and game polish, things like adding sound effects and visual effects. With a constant feedback loop from my wife, we got to a point where we were comfortable publishing the demo. The demo went live on January 23rd, 2025. I posted a couple of posts on Reddit on Cozy Game subreddits to get some people to play it. And wow, the game blew up. Before the demo, the game had around 300 to 400 wishlists. About 2 weeks after the demo, the game reached 4,000. I did not expect this at all. My overall goal was to receive around 2,000 wishlists by the time the game comes out, but we smashed past it. It is widely understood by indie market experts that developers should aim to have at least between 7,000 and 10,000 wishlists before the release to have any financial success. I hope this gives you a scale on these wishlist numbers. I aimed way below the recommended number because I didn't dare to hope for 7,000 wishlists. Version 4, Steam Next Fest and Release. Steam hosts an event called Steam Next Fest 3 times a year to highlight upcoming games with demos. My goal was to participate in the February edition, since I knew this event brings global attention to upcoming games. This is the reason why I published the demo a month beforehand, so I had time to work out any problems or bugs and be ready for the masses. How did I prepare? First, I needed to gain media attention and emailed a ton of people to cover the Bookbound demo on their Steam Next Fest videos. Luckily for me, they did. A lot of cozy content creators included my game in their lists of games. Then I wanted to make sure that the last features are ready for release. At this point, I had already decided that the release of Bookbound would happen about a week after the Steam Next Fest ends. The goal was to use the momentum of the Steam algorithm to carry the game to a successful release. One feature that I changed were customer interactions when the player advertised to them. Until now, the player clicked through a dialogue, and the success of advertising was random. I didn't really like this, and I think players also didn't. I added the customer advertising minigame, where you juggle the conversation between all participants. This minigame was cozy and challenging at the same time. Players could choose to go for up to 4 customers or focus only on one. The final gameplay element for the full version was writing a book. I wasn't sure if I had enough time to do this, but I wanted to at least try. Or even add it post-release. The aim was to allow players to collect inspiration and then put together books, and of course also sell them. I reused the same cover generation tool that I had written for the existing books, but now I added it as a tool in the game, similarly to the character creator. It would have been too overwhelming if the game has players write entire books, so instead I opted to writing chapter titles only. I feel like it's enough to tell a story, especially with a list of random words which can be selected to make titles. They're supposed to be for gamepad support initially, but I feel like even keyboard and mouse players can take advantage of it. You can really make some funny stuff with this. To gather inspiration, I added a bunch of floating letters in the world. It gives the player a reason to explore a little more and venture out from the shop. The inspiration for this was from the Psychonauts games, where you can collect figments in the world. This book writing feature was exclusive to the full release and not included in the demo. Then the Steam Next Fest happened, and Bookbound was featured by many content creators as well as Steam. Things went crazy well until I received an email from my part-time job, being informed that I was made redundant. This was bittersweet. On one hand, I had used that job to give my life stability and sustain game development, and on the other hand, Bookbound is predicted to do well in terms of sales, potentially giving me the chance to go full-time. I just wasn't ready yet to make that leap into full-time game development. I was in shock and didn't do any work until the day Bookbound released. Luckily, everything was in place, and I only had to put the latest version on the Steam servers. On March 6th, 2025, the release day, Bookbound reached around 15,000 wishlists and sold 1,500 copies. Version 5, Upgrades. Over the next few days and weeks, I received very positive reviews on Steam, which was fantastic. Players really enjoyed Bookbound. But there were a few things I could have improved, and eventually did for the 1.1 update. First, it seems like cozy players expect storylines and dialogue. Apart from Stefan, there was none of that in Bookbound, so my wife put a ton of dialogue for 5 new characters. Second, players wanted more progression and expansion, so I added the ability to increase the shop size, along with a couple of items to make it easier to run a larger shop, like automatic checkouts, cleaning, and helping customers. With this 1.1 release, I was completely happy and satisfied with the game that Bookbound has become. What's next? To this day, I'm a full-time indie game developer and count on your support. I have resumed working on my post project, Bots and Mods. In that game, players also run a shop, but this time it's a robot repair shop. Players will be able to craft, gather, build and repair robots, whilst talking to a whole bunch of interesting characters in a humorous cyberpunk world. With everything I learned from Bookbound, it's shaping up to be a very nice game. Recently, I started streaming the development of bots and mods over on Twitch, with plans to post devlog videos here on YouTube. There's also a Discord server you can join to get notified about updates from me. So join me on this Bit66 adventure.